From Los Angeles and Nashville, get ready to go behind the scenes with Entertainment Dudes. What happens when you pair a director, a voice actor in a world, and some of the most interesting people in entertainment? You're about to find out. Doobie 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 doobie.
I thought you said
Doobie doobie doo.
I thought you said booby. That's wrong.
No.
Doobie.
This
Every
is a
show should start.
family-friendly program.
Oh, so let's rewind that.
My hat's
See, it's
not
there
we go. That's better.
Perfect. Now it's family
Perfect.
friendly.
Yes, exactly. Okay, wait. What we got going on today, Jason?
Well, we got another exciting episode at Entertainment Dudes. Today's episode, we're going to actually have our guest, a previous guest back. We're going to have Joel Robertson. Ooh. He is a visual effects genius extraordinaire. If you did not see his episode before, we talked to him a little bit about what it means in VFX, how you get started, the work about what goes into that process and the things that you can learn and glean from it. And today we decided to have him back to talk about actually some breakdowns of some of the stuff that he's worked on.
Breakdown.
I'll always, and there he is. Like, there's this, like, it's like, you know, when you're pregnant, the baby comes, it just, hey, there you go. And there's Joel.
We just had our second son 4 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago.
Yes, new dad. Excellent. I saw you get, like you just showed, you got the little baby thing next to you. So when he's screaming, you can just whack, quack.
It's the Baby Yoda pram.
Baby Yoda.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
It is. Does it close completely? Like
the only thing it doesn't do is float.
Oh, see, now that's a new one. We got to invent this. I'm sure the tech exists already, but we just lost the tech. So we got to find
the Library
it.
of Alexandria. It's buried somewhere.
Oh, would it be amazing to go back in time? If I had a time machine, I'd go back, take all of the documents from right before it burns, and then just come to the future with them. They're like, we lost everything. No, you didn't. Don't worry. We went back in time and got it.
Maybe that's what
actually
Tesla
a premise
did.
for a good show. I like that premise.
Tesla did.
Tesla did this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
He invented a time machine, went back and stole the tech from Tesla, made his car, made his ship, made his everything.
Right.
Because he goes in the past. Yeah. Thanks for being on the show, Joel. We're excited to have you.
We got to work on something.
See you later. Bye. I'll start with this board back here, this lightsaber. And you can use your 3 Emmys. I think we get a good time machine. And your 3D printer. We're ready to go. Yes. All right. Enough about talking about us. So, Joel, speak.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me on this podcast. I had so much fun last time. We had to do it again.
Yes. So I'm excited today. We're going to look at a couple of projects you've been working on. One of them was involving the Unreal Engine, and you shot down where at the View in Tampa. Tell us about this project, and I guess you're going to show us a little bit about it and the process. Yeah. Like, when someone comes to you with the project, director, how do you, how do you know that you want to use what parts of the tool you want to use in the studio? What parts you're going to shoot real? That process, like we talked about last time, it switches to you're working with the art department in the beginning. Tell us about this project and what was going on and why you guys made the choices you did to shoot the way that you did.
Yeah. Well, a little bit about this project. It was called Finding Faith in Film. And so there was the pastor named Keith Loy who kind of came to Sony Affirm and said, hey, I've got this idea. I want to take your films and kind of break them down for our church and kind of pull out some faith elements from your film. And Sony said, we'd like to do a little pilot for this. And so into the discussions, they said, well, we'd like to be able to be in the actual locations from the actual movies. So you play a clip from the movie, and then he's in the actual location from that. So rather than traveling all around and bringing crew and doing all that, I said, well, we should look into seeing if we could capture the locations in Unreal Engine and do the virtual production thing in a volume there in Tampa. And so that's what we did. And so I will go ahead and share my screen real quick.
Yes.
Right.
So anyways, this is him in the volume this is just they have a reflective floor here, which was really nice. It kind of felt like really high end. And this was just a background that we had made just for the almost kind of like our set, basically.
So did you design that, or do you have somebody else design it? Does a matte paint, like who builds the backgrounds like this?
Yeah, I designed like the blocks that kind of rotate. And then Cody, who does all of our Unreal Engine stuff and modeling, and he's like a CG just guru. He modeled these curtains, and we kind of collaborated to put those together. But
so, how did you use this to actually recreate the film locations?
Well, we used what's called photogrammetry, and so here is a clip from the actual movie, and we talked to Sony Affirm and asked if we could get any information on these films, where it was shot, and they actually had their call sheets still.
Okay.
And this location happens to be in the same town that my wife is from, Wilmington, North Carolina. And so we contacted this church and said, hey, can we come in and basically capture this location in 3D using photogrammetry, which is basically just you take hundreds of photos from all different angles, and then you feed that into the computer, and it can recreate a 3D model of your actual location. So that's what we did.
So in order to get good photogrammetry, what size like files do you shoot? I know video it's 4K, but how many do you shoot? The higher resolution, the better, I imagine.
Well, it kind of depends on what we needed. We didn't need anything super high resolution, so I shot in fairly high resolution, but then found that the computer had a much easier time putting together the model if we had just lower resolution JPEGs.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, this is what we came up with. This is what the computer kicked out as far as, the location that we were in, which is, it just kind of works. And when I saw it through the screen, I said, wow, you can't even tell. Like, so these pews back here and behind him were on the screen. And then these that he's actually interacting with are with the art department. We sent a photo of what the actual pews look like, and they were able to recreate them.
Yeah, they just built them to match the background. Yeah. That's a part of that art department again, because without the work and partnership between you, the visual effects in the foreground, this will not sell. So you had to have the photos, share the photos. The art department builds the pieces into it, and then you blend those with the background. Now, sometimes you have the pieces in the foreground, and they say these need to match, the background needs to match these.
Yeah, vice versa. Yeah,
vice versa. But in this case, you already had the shots of the space that you needed, and so those things had to match it. But look how it's like.
Yeah,
look at that. Yeah, that's great.
And because it's on an LED volume, you have all this elements like here that it's actually emitting light, and so you're seeing the actual like wrap around his
face,
space and his clothes that you normally don't. You have to work to get if you're doing green screen and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
I know one of the challenges with an LED, one of the challenges I know with an LED wall is it's hard to get directional light from the LED panels because they're flat LED panels. So I know that a lot of the times the panels, you'll have to remove them. Like if you wanted a hard backlight, they would remove pieces of the panels, shoot a light through, and you'll get like a hard rimmed light. If they want supplemental stuff, the pieces get pulled out of this entire panel and you shoot actual lights through them. And sometimes they look sort of like Swiss cheese if you look at them from the side. Like I know a friend of ours on Mandalorian, he said like one time, like both sides, it was just almost like a checkerboard. Every piece was out and there was a light blasted in. but you still get this beautiful overall lighting that matches the set so perfectly. And then they can do accents with key lights, and it makes this the blend, even with the parallax and everything, how it works.
Yeah.
Now there's the camera shifts, right? Like the background shifts as the camera's dollying, like left to right.
Yeah.
It does that weird overlay, so it gives you that matching feeling of being in that space.
Yeah, the wall kind of disappears, and the illusion is that it goes on forever, you know.
Yeah.
And with this, it's harder to tell. Maybe something here, where you could see the actual parallax going on a little bit more.
Yeah.
But,
now you can increase the amount of parallax you get as well. Is it camera dependent, or can you do you have control over how much parallax you get?
It's camera dependent, but it's also world space. So, what View has done is really genius. Is they've set up their volume, and whenever they have a need for people like us to come in and create something like this, they'll send kind of like a template of where their stage is, and so we build to their world space so that it's a 1-to-1. So that way, because sometimes
matches exactly.
in different 3D programs, you'll have widely varying spaces, and so a lot of that time is figuring out, okay, what's a 1-to-1.
They do all that lifting for you, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, so we basically built to their template, so we knew that 6 feet is 6 feet on their volume.
No, so, that's cool. That's awesome. So what's real in this one? I imagine obviously the fence he's hanging on to.
Yeah, the fence, and that's it. It was funny, just like, I mean, if you saw our behind the scenes, it was quite comical because you had this one thing, a light off to the side here.
Yeah, there it is. That's where you're getting
about it,
Yeah. That's hilarious. That's where you're getting that backlight. See, that's another source one. So they didn't open a hole for it because you're not using the entire volume. So they're able to drop the light right there in front of the LED thing, just like normal. So
we just had just a regular light here. I think we even had some negative
fill
on this side just to kind of shape him a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not like, I mean, it is cool because you could add a yellow light here if you wanted on the screen, and it would cast it, but it's not like this intense.
Yeah, you don't get that sharp. Yeah, so if you want those highlights, you still supplement with the if you want it to pop. Like, I really want this to highlight, and I think it kind of matches the space too, because you even have the shine on the how you have the lights on the background. It's that the shine on the fence matches the background, so you kind of have to have that in order to sell the effect. Like, I think one of the tricks is how matching the lighting. Oh, you don't have to. That's the cool part, is LED. Whatever you create on the background is essentially the light that's projected on the talent. So the struggle isn't as much matching the lighting of your green screen subject with the background anymore. They're together, right?
Right. Yeah.
Especially on like the Mandalorian with his armor, it's so shiny that really sells that.
Yeah, and that probably was a huge factor going into, okay, do we shoot green screen or do we try this new technique? Because there is so much reflection on there. He's either going to be full CG, or they need to figure out a way to shoot him and get that in camera.
Yeah, well, it's gorgeous. It works, and this looks great. I love that.
It's amazing.
So how many setups did you do for that?
9.
9 setups.
We did 9, yeah. And some were easy. Some was like, one of them was at the 50-yard line at like a high school football field. So there wasn't any like crazy parallax that needed to happen. But basically what we did is we took a 360-degree panoramic image, and then we brought that into the Unreal Engine, basically just projected that onto a big dome. And so that way you had some of that parallax whenever the camera moved, but you didn't need to see all of this, we didn't have a ton of stuff in the foreground that you could really tell that you needed parallax. But So that's what we did in that.
That's cool. What is it? What's the time frame? So to do 9 setups and to do to prep time, how much time did you have, and did you underestimate the amount of time you needed, or was that, how long does that take? And so if I had to say, hey Joel, I have this project, about how long can I expect that process to need?
It takes probably about, I'd say, a week per location once you wanted to, get it right.
Dialed in.
Yeah.
Now,
dialed
how many of those elements, is that sort of like, did you go more of a matte background and it's stuck, or can you move elements in the background, like if you needed a bench to move back or forth the pew, or was it just like that's it?
Yeah, that's what was really cool. So we'd have the basic level or design from Unreal Engine, and then we'd pull that in, and once the DP kind of got in there, he's like, okay, can we move this over here? And so we kind of designed things. We moved the lights, we moved where the sun was, and so we had all these things that we could adjust on the fly. And it was like, I think it took about 10 or 15 minutes to kind of bake in the lighting. So you kind of have to, once you do a big change, then it takes a couple minutes to bake that lighting so it doesn't flicker.
So it's sort of like rendering. When you bounce
Yeah.
out a video that you've done in post, it's exporting a render to get your final file that plays.
Yeah.
Okay.
But once it's baked, you can go in with the camera and it's it's all like you were there.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's great.
That's very cool. I was wanting to also get to the Eric Church video, because that
Yes.
was a whole other area that you're working in, and some very cool innovation.
Yeah, describe for us a little bit about what this project was, what the idea was, and how did you go about like figuring out how you're going to do it? I know you like to problem solve, so
I love problem solving. So a buddy of mine, his name is Reed Long. He's a director here in Nashville, and he came and said, we're looking at doing like the idea is we want to take 20 years worth of music videos and take clips from those and re-edit a new video, but have the artist singing the new lines from the new song. And so it would kind of be like one of those Easter egg things that were like, if you were a fan 20 years ago, you could you go, oh, I remember that, but he's singing different words. And my immediate thought was, okay, deepfake. This is a deepfake thing. But then the more that I got into it, you need to have a performance to map onto, to basically swap the face. And we had the performance, but he was saying the wrong words. And so we would need to actually have a new performance and then do the deepfake on top of that. So I will let me share my screen.
yeah, because in a deepfake, basically what it's doing is the AI or computer is taking a selection of still images across all of the more previous video you have and are feeding into it, the better the deepfake, right?
But in this case, you're not running a new face over an old face. You're running the same face, and you need to change the lip movements.
Yeah. So we had to kind of figure out a new technique, to bring that new performance in. And so I'll share my screen again here.
Okay.
So here's just like the initial test that I did. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Just real, I mean.
What's this guy been drinking?
Coca-Cola.
Coke Zero.
Oh, yeah, that's probably right.
As you can see, this is a very informal thing. But I wanted to just test it. So using my face, I was able to track the movements in my face and then basically just take a still from his video, one of his videos, and just map it back on top. And so, so that's what we did. Is the new technique was to basically map, shoot Eric's face, and then remap his old face back on top.
Wow, that's so he essentially
Yeah.
does the performance. You track or film his face, and then take the images from the previous one and map it.
Yeah, map it back on top.
Do you do it frame by frame? Like, do you stretch it, or does it automatically track this? And did you do this in After Effects?
Yeah, I did it in After Effects, and so I'll kind of.
So there's no deep fake in this, then, essentially.
No, not really. It's not really a traditional deepfake.
Yeah.
So here, this is in After Effects, and here, obviously the more that we did, the better we got at it with the techniques. So here's our normal plate where we have just him. This is the normal old music video that we had, and we wanted to basically remap his face back on. And so what we did is we stabilized his face.
So you tracked it. You tracked his face so that you.
So we tracked it.
Right.
There's a plugin called Lockdown, which basically stabilizes the face, but it also tracks features. So it tracked all these points on his face, and then basically maps it to a mesh. And then inside that mesh, you can see it's all stabilized.
Oh wow!
So now that his face is stabilized in there, we could basically lay the new performance back on top.
Come on, dude, that's crazy.
And then the mouth, we found that if we just took his new performance of his mouth, it fit better than trying to like mesh
his old mouth, right?
Yeah.
So you're essentially tracking the performance, replacing the mouth.
Yeah. And then
so
do you can see here?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is side by side.
Side by side.
And the new one's the one you just shot's on the left, right? I can't even tell.
Yeah. So this is his original performance, and then here is the tracked and remapped face on the left.
That's wild, yeah.
And
because even the whole word is different. Even it's that I think would be the hardest, because you think his eyes or cheeks would change, like,
Yeah, and there are, it gets a little bit into the uncanny valley where like.
And for those of us who don't know what the uncanny valley is, again, this?
Yeah, it's whenever something is really, really close to real life, but is something off about it. And, horror films use that to a great extent to make things creepy, and a lot of times that uncanny valley just seems creepy.
Oh, yeah.
Because your brain is trained every day to look at faces and recognize patterns. And when it's slightly off, your brain will say there's something wrong about this person.
Yeah. It's what makes selling the face the hardest part. Like the background, we're already sold. Like you can't even tell
right
anymore. I sometimes I notice occasionally if it's really overproduced, but a lot of times you don't even know it's background. You don't notice. But faces for me, I still notice. Like even they're like, it's incredible. I'm like, it's so close. We are almost there. But
it's almost there.
Yeah.
And we also had to basically paint out his head.
What's that mean?
Obviously, if we just laid his new face on top, you would still see his ear,
right,
and his chin moving from the last performance. So we basically would have to go in and, this yellow light back here, recreate it so it was a full circle. This one's a little bit easier because it's just a dark background. We could just throw that dark background back in behind him and get rid of this face so we could drag that back on top. But yeah, there's a lot of little things, and you can't really tell from here, but even things like slight head movements back and forth. Whenever you say a word, sometimes people's inflections, your head moves slightly from side to side.
Yeah.
And so we went in and I used just a standard 3D like model of a male head, and used the depth pass information. So whenever you have a 3D model, you can basically specify, what is closer to the camera, what's further away, using black and white information.
Mm.
And that's called like a depth pass. So I could pull the depth pass from that head, and it didn't really need to match 100%. But I got it to a place where it matched good enough. And then from that, you can displace to a certain extent your image using that depth map. And so
amazing,
so you can kind of make his head slightly do those slight rotations. And it's not really noticeable to the eye, but it helps sell the fact that it's not just a still,
right?
That you're remapping. So there's a lot of interesting things that go into.
Well, can we see can you show a piece of? Do you have a piece of it that's kind of finished, or
you've got footage that's from 2006,
right?
Yeah,
and this is the best that we have, so
right.
It's interesting trying to match the pixelation of that as well.
Yeah, like to match everything that goes into the grain.
There's all kinds of textures and
I mean, have you ever tried, in a production, if you're shooting on 3 cameras, sometimes even between the same type of camera, trying to get, it shoots a different texture, a different and even when you match them, you can tell gosh, they're different. That's just 2 cameras at the same time, the same kind. It's still hard to sometimes get them to match. So you're talking to cameras that are 15 years old, trying to match something that's done today. That's crazy. Yeah, so that's great. That one you did.
If you go back to that shot, you can kind of see, if you go back to that one, what I was talking about with the slight head.
Yeah, there his. Yeah, he does this. Yeah.
Yeah, and that just helps sell it just a little bit more.
Yeah, that one looks real. That one I can't do. That's great. And then the head goes, just a little teeny deek.
Just a little bit, just that little bit.
Yeah, and it helps sell it.
That's all animated too, so you kind of have to kind of study how he moves his head, and so his inflections, and so whenever he says a certain word, he may turn his head a little bit. We planned for it too, so when Reed was putting the edit together, he was saying, if there's anything in here that you think doesn't work, let's swap out something, So you'll notice that everything is pretty much straight to camera, or his head doesn't really move a ton, because there are limitations to this effect.
Yeah, to it working that way that you did.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Very cool.
So, yeah, and that was a fun one to do. I like being able to problem solve and kind of get something working.
So based on what you've worked on in the last couple of years, and based on what you see, what do you see? Kind of where do you see the tech going? Like, what do you think is next steps? Like, what are you excited about using it to try to do? Like,
there's just so many new things going on. I'm working on something right now. I can't share it. Maybe next time. But it's really cool. They captured. We talked about 3D grammetry or photogrammetry. I'm working on something right now where you have a basically photogrammetry performance of an artist, and they're in this whole stage where you have like a whole array of cameras. Think of like the Matrix, the way that they shot that bullet time all the way around, except they're all shooting exactly at the same time, and they're creating a model per frame. And so the guy is up there with his guitar, and he did a whole entire performance of his song. And now we have a 3D model of him that we
in
can,
every position.
in every position. So if we wanted to rotate him, get up really close.
From 360. That's
from
amazing.
360. So, and then they went out and shot a bunch of plates out in Arizona. And then, so now we're compositing him into those scenes at any angle that we need or any angle that we want.
Amazing. So if you're doing the plates for that, are you shooting 360 plates and sky as well, or is it just like you create sky because sky is sky, and then you just have a certain direction you want to face? Like,
what we did is we captured a 360 HDR to basically light for that location, and then it was just your typical just shooting a plate and making sure that it's trackable. And so we threw that into the computer and tracked the 3D camera, recreated that move. And so now we have the 3D camera move plus the model inside and then the plate behind it. And then, so now he's in that scene. I just thought it's really cool. And so, there's so many things, you talk about shooting in volumes or using the Unreal Engine for a lot of things that would normally take months to render. Now you can do it in real time.
Well, it shortens your turnaround time too, I imagine. Like, it makes it a lot quicker from shoot to delivery.
Mm-hmm. And it gives you a lot more flexibility as well.
Well, that's really helpful too to production companies in terms of getting paid if you're not getting the entire amount up front. When you're doing productions and it takes you 3 weeks to do the post instead of like 3 months, that's also very helpful. Like, I could get paid sooner. I like this. That's incredible.
Well, in theory.
In theory, true. It depends what you're working for. I remember I worked with Sony a couple times and some other companies, and when you're working with the bigger companies, sometimes it was 90. My longest was 128 days.
Wow.
To get paid. And it was a big one. It was a whole month and a half worth of work too. So it wasn't like, I worked for 2 days and they didn't pay me. It was like and I had paid other people too. So I had other people I'd paid, and so you're just sitting there waiting, like, I hope I get paid. Like, send the invoice again. It was a reminder. One thing I actually found that worked, it was something that my dad had told me. He said, anytime I'm having a client, it's taking a little bit longer to get paid. He said, and for me, it's more important. I need this money. He said, I'll send out a video. And he said, hey, if you pay today, it's 15% off the total cost. And he said in almost every circumstance, he was getting paid. He'd get paid within 48 hours of that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he said, so yeah, because sometimes especially as like $6,000 project, that saves him $700, and he's like, I get paid and they save $700. So I was like, that's brilliant. And I used that a couple times. I think the most I did was 10%, and within 24 to 48 hours, I was paid. So.
Right.
Just because the moment that accountant sees that, they're like, wait, we're going to save $700 or $1,000. They're like, let's do it now. Like, pay it right now. Yeah. And especially if they've got like a bunch of bills mounting up, they have to pay 10 to 15 people. If one person's offering 15%, they're going to pay you before they pay someone else, because that'll save them. So yeah, clever. Cool. Yeah, it was a great trick. I was like, I like that. A lot of something we creatives, a lot of creatives don't think about. But if you're thinking about that business side, about how much more goes on to it once you start hiring employees, once you start dealing with clients, once you start doing all that stuff. Like for this now, budgeting for something like this when a lot of it's never done. Eric Church, that could have taken you 2 months to try to figure out. And even then it might not have worked. So it's, how do you budget for that?
That was kind of the thing, is I said, this has never been done. At least I've never done it, and I don't know anyone who has. So we just kind of said, let's make sure we have plenty of time and budget for this thing. And the good thing is you don't have, with this particular project, we didn't have your typical shoot where you had a 2-day shoot or whatever, right? And you're paying for all these, lighting and grip packages. We literally just had a camera and one light capturing his new performance, and he was just sitting in a chair.
He's like, I like this. I want all my videos like this.
So we did have the traditional budget of a full music video, where we all put it into the post and just said, let's figure it out. So that was good that we, you know, that we weren't trying to do that on top of a full-on production.
Yeah.
So we had the full budget of a music video dedicated just to figuring this out.
But that's also just good business. That comes from time and practice and having done it so many times. Like I think that's one of the greatest challenges is how do I know how much to bill for this? Because I know there's projects I ended up paying for because by the time I was done, I went way over. I was like, it just took too long, it's longer to figure out, or so budgeting for those things. One trick that I learned, and especially in post-production side, was a lot of times, you know, you have clients that'll come changes, and you can be making changes like you have $1,000 for editing budget or whatever, and now you're on like your 7th round of changes, and then they show someone else who needs to see it and someone else who needs to see it. So at one point I said, you know, I'll do 3 changes. You get your rough cut, you get a fine cut, you get a final cut, and any change after that I charge it at 2 times whatever the regular hourly rate was, so like 120 an hour or 150 an hour, and almost all the changes disappeared. Yeah, because it's really good, because if you work with a large organization that has about 20 people that need to look at it and approve something, well, what they generally do is they'll have Robert will look at it, and Robert's like, oh yeah, it's great, send it back. And then he's like, you're do all the changes. Is like, okay, I need to show Lisa now. Or Lisa sends an email while you're working on something, and Lisa's like, oh, I noticed the banner in the background, the color's a little too pink, and can we, okay, I'm gonna change. And if you're doing that with like 20 people, it's just a nightmare. So setting up a structure like this where you can, you're doing that. I'm like, okay, fine. They want me to make changes. I'm making $200 an hour. I'll make changes all day for you. No problem. You know, I was like, great. I'm changes. Yeah, I like changes. Yeah. So, but I always remind them, I said, hey, you know, I've already finished that fine cut. This goes into that hourly part. It's $200 an hour to make any changes. I'm happy to do them for you. No problem. Just want you to know. Almost all of them disappear. Occasionally I had one that said, we really do need to make this change. Mm-hmm. Okay, no problem. And then I'll just send the separate invoice for that. And the next time they know, like it hurt last time. That cost us $600 more than we thought. They're like, let's make sure we get it done. So that's just a helpful tool when you're trying to budget, like when you're trying to figure out something, especially if you're doing research into something where it's a new idea. You don't know. You have no clue how long it's going to take until you've actually done it. But
I think we had 2 months to kind of figure it out before it was due. And we spent several weeks just doing the R&D, trying to figure out, okay, what works, what doesn't work, how do we shoot it? And then by the time we had done so many tests that by the time that we were ready to just do it and shoot it, then it was ready to go. We had, you know, the other thing too is I was like, you know, as just me as a small studio, just a couple people working with me, I said, you know, this is a big job, and I think my idea will work, but let's also hire another company who could do some of those harder shots, and so kind of divvy out the work as well. And so that's what we did.
Do you think you would have made it if you had to do all of them in time?
Yeah.
But it would have been like you'd had no hair left.
It was one of those things where, like, when I first did the first test, it took an entire day because I was finding once you do this, there's another issue that pops up, and then you do this, but then you develop a workflow, and you go, that's just part of the workflow. And then I was by the last shot, I was getting it down to about a half day to get one shot done. So the more I did it, the more I kind of understood how it works.
Yeah. You figured out you had a process you could just execute. Like step 1, step 2, step 3, done, export, finished. Okay. That's great.
But it was still very tough to try to explain the thought process.
How do you?
It's kind of one of those things where, like, if you're given a shot, you kind of need to be that, you know, like the person who kind of walks that shot all the way through, because there are just so many different, you get to know that shot, versus if you had a shot halfway done, you hand it to somebody else, they may not even know what you're doing there.
Yeah, even trying to reverse engineer the steps, and especially if they generally have a different process, you know, and then you get, I think that's one thing I found in post-production is the importance of creating a post-production workflow that works if you have to hand the project off to someone else. And based upon years of doing it, you know, 25 years of editing, I created certain folder structures and flows that I duplicate across all processes that I know that every editor I've ever worked with uses in some capacity this form, some similar format, so you can duplicate that process and pass it off, especially with larger projects. So we had one project, we had like 70 half-hour videos that we were creating, and we had a month and a half to deliver it. So I had to keep adding on editors in order to get the budget done. I mean, get the project done in time. And just having a good flow system that works, that's organized, that I can pass off is so important with something like you said, like, they need to be able to look what they've done, figure it out pretty quickly, and not spend 3 days just trying to figure out what in the world you were doing before they can even start working on their process. So,
and with VFX houses, it's a little bit different because everyone's using different softwares and programs.
Yeah, how do you organize that?
Well, that's why I just, you know, with this project, you just kind of had, once you had your shot, you just kind of take it all the way to the end. Because it would be hard to explain to somebody else why you're doing what you're doing. It's quicker to just, that's there because of this. I'll just make that adjustment real quick and then, you know, kick it out. But yeah, I mean, that's if any of your audience knows cool tricks or whatever, you know, like I'm all for, you know, learning how to manage a project better.
Well, cool. Well, that said, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, my email is joelr@fourthcrown. It's spelled FOURTHCROWN.com.
Okay.
And then likewise, fourthcrown.com is my web address. And we're on Vimeo. Our Instagram is just @fourthcrown.
Okay. And in the description of the show, we'll link to some of Joel's work and that Eric Church video especially. So if you want to take a look at that, it'll be in the show description.
Well, thank you guys.
Excellent. Yes, awesome. Hey, well, Joel, it was great having you on again, and I think it'd be awesome to have you on again if the next project, if you want to talk when you're finished with this one. Since you've already mentioned it, it might be great to see. Did you do any BTS of this one at all?
There's no BTS.
Mother son of a! I want the fucking BTS. Jeez, holy!
I can do some BTS of like over my shoulder as I'm working on it.
That's a good idea. You hold like this, and then you get the BTS as just the back of your head. You're like, oh crap, I didn't get a good shot.
Yeah.
Yes,
BTS means behind the shoulder.
Behind the shoulder.
Behind the shoulder.
Big, I thought it was big, totally awesome shot. So yes, even some screen captures of your process could be cool if you want to. Cool. If you want to share a couple of those, but oh man, it's so great having you on. Thank you for joining Entertainment Dudes, and we're excited you came onto the show. And,
I always have fun with y'all, and the time flies. I'm looking; it's 46 minutes already.
Done like this, poof.
Yeah, just like that.
Yes. Well, awesome.
I appreciate it.
Yes, thanks again.
Thank you. All right.
This is Entertainment
Dudes.
Da 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 da.